Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So today I want to talk a little bit about how to rent a mini excavator. So the first thing to do is to head over to a rental location. So in my neck of the woods there's a Sunbelt rental that's pretty close to me, so I decided to go with these guys to rent my excavator. So coming to their website, I obviously come down here and look for earth moving, and I'm interested in mini excavators, and they come in a lot of different sizes, mostly by weight class. I discovered that the best thing to do is to get one that's as big as you can manage that will fit on your site. So in my case, that's the 6,000 pound mini excavator. It just helps you move dirt around a little bit more easily than some of the smaller, lighter ones. Now on these, you'll notice that they don't seem to list prices, so you need to enter the dates of your rental for availability and to figure out how much it's going to cost. So in my case, let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to set the rental dates, and the trick that I discovered after talking with the Sunbelt rental people is most of these are rented by the day. So if you pick this up on a Monday, you'll have to return it on a Tuesday. If you pick it up on a Thursday, you'll have to return it on a Friday. The only difference, the only trick here is if you pick it up on a Friday, you actually get to keep it all weekend and you get to return it on a Monday. So that's great for someone like me when I have most of the weekend free but not the weekdays. So I'm just going to pick a weekend, like a Friday, and then return on the next Monday. And by setting that and hitting apply, then we're going to start getting prices for these. So again, the thing that's most important, at least that I discovered for my case, is to pick one that has the size that you would like. So what I mean by that is by coming into this, you'll see that you can get a lot of different options here. You'll have to call the store to see which ones they have. But the thing that was the limiting factor for me was actually the overall width, because my house where I'm doing the work has a little pathway that we're going to have to get through, and it has a maximum width of about 64 inches. So the biggest one that I'm going to be able to get through is this Bobcat here, which is about 60 inches. So this one was what I ended up going with, and again, looks like the prices went up. When I rented this, it was about $400 a day. Now what that means though, it's not a full day of work. What this really means is you have one day to use it, or 8 hours of time on the meter, whichever is less. So that's going to come into play a little bit later. But anyway, this is something to consider when you're renting. The other thing to consider is that these things are quite large, right? This mini excavator, you can actually see that it's almost 6,000 pounds. Now they do have the option where you can go to the store and pick up this unit. They'll rent a trailer. If you pay $65 to rent their trailer, they will give you an 18-foot long tilt trailer. The problem is that trailer already weighs about 3,000 pounds, and then you throw a 6,000 pound excavator on top of it, and you've got an almost 10,000 pound thing rolling down the road. So you actually need a pretty large truck to be able to carry that safely. So I wasn't able to do that, so I opted to use a delivery fee. So they will deliver this to your site and pick it up for $100 each way. So I opted to do that and pay basically $200 for delivery and pickup. So let's see, what does that look like when they deliver to the site? So as you can see, they dropped this off with a giant trailer. So I am really glad I didn't try to do this myself and just had them deliver it. So they pulled up to the top of the driveway. So I live at the bottom of a driveway that's actually pretty narrow, and they didn't even try to get this trailer down there, which is a really good idea. They just pulled out of the side of the road, unloaded it, and then he drove it down, drove the excavator down by itself down the driveway, which was really smart because he can now not have to worry about making any of these turns, and I don't have to stress about this, about blocking up the road for all the neighbors. So as you can see, this was actually not too bad. All right, so here it is. It's all delivered. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's walk around, take some pictures of it, just get an idea of what this looks like when it was delivered. Just like renting a car, right? You want to take a bunch of pictures, make sure you didn't damage it. So here it is. So yeah, pretty easy. They walked me through it. They gave me a couple of instructions on how to use it, how to operate it. So I'm pretty excited. So let's go ahead and see if we can now get it through the narrow passageway over there and out to the job site. So as you can see, I'm really glad I measured this beforehand because it is a really tight fit. I have literally about 1 inch on either side, but it does fit, so I think we're off to the races. So it was surprisingly easy to learn how to use the excavator. It just took a couple of minutes, and after you get used to it, it's actually pretty dexterous, and you can use it to landscape pretty easily. I would definitely recommend getting a mini excavator with a thumb attachment. Having that thumb and being able to close on the bucket was very, very helpful. The other thing that's very interesting is I actually ended up using sort of the bulldoze feature a lot more than the actual excavator arm. But that being said, I did use both of them pretty extensively in combination. As you can kind of see from this time lapse, that you can see it does take a little while. This was about 2 days of work, a little over. Well, in fact, we'll talk about how many hours in just a second of how long I actually used it. But as you can see, it's actually kind of a lot of fun. It's actually pretty soothing and relaxing to sit there on the excavator and just smooth things out and move dirt around. And the weight of the excavator was actually really helpful because I was able to use it to compact some of the soil just by driving back and forth over it several times. So that was pretty darn useful. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to just flatten out some areas so I can build a concrete slab. I'm trying to put a small garden shed out here, so I needed to flatten the area, compact the soil, and basically just get it ready so I could put a slab on top. Once I was done with it, maybe the next thing we should talk about is how to return the excavator. So you saw that they dropped it off using a big trailer, and I had to schedule a time for them to deliver it. I had to tell them when I wanted it. But then more importantly, at the end of the weekend, I had to actually call Sunbelt Rentals and say, hey, I'm actually done with it. You guys can come pick it up. And I thought they would just come pick it up on Monday first thing. You know, they were always talking about, oh, this is a one-day rental or over the weekend, as you saw here. But what ended up happening is they actually took about an additional week. So the thing sat in my driveway unused all week because I guess they just weren't near my neck of the woods and they didn't have a trailer ready. So it was kind of interesting that I only paid for a day, but it was sitting on my property for probably a full week before they actually picked it up and took it back. Okay, so how much did this cost? So in this column, these are what I was expecting to pay. So I knew it was going to be a $400 rental charge for the 8 hours of the rental, plus $200 for the delivery, and I knew there was going to be tax. And they ended up throwing on a couple of these dealer fees and things like that, but they weren't too bad. Now, what's interesting about this is I know I went over the 8-hour limit, so I expected to pay a prorated fee. They told me that if I went over the 8-hour limit, it wasn't a problem. They were just going to start charging me per hour of usage. Now, the only thing that's interesting about this is, according to my calculations, I used it for about 11.2 hours, so I was hoping they would be generous and charge me just 3 extra hours. But they claim that I used it for almost 12 hours, and this is my only kind of issue with this rental is I didn't understand where they got this number. I took a picture of the hours on the clock as soon as I got the rental, and you can see here that it's 1,055.4. They claimed that it was 1,050.9, so on my invoice, I don't know where they got this number. I don't know where they got this extra number. And long story short, I don't know how they calculated 11.8. I think it was more like 11.2. So long story short, I'm not going to argue over, you know, a 1 hour difference. But it just felt a little odd that they seemed to round up rather than rounding down. And I don't even know where they got this number. So anyway, that was kind of odd. So I did end up paying another $200 extra that I wasn't, well, I was kind of quasi expecting to pay. The other thing that was not made clear to me at the rental, and nobody told me about this, is that they were going to charge me for fuel. So FYI, if you're renting one of these, you should fill it up before you return it, because what they ended up doing was they charged me for using 8 gallons of diesel, and they charge $10 a gallon, which is a lot more than what you can get down at the store. Of course, the hassle of trying to get, you know, 8 gallons of diesel to your site, maybe it's not worth it, but they kind of had me bent over a barrel here. But I wasn't aware of this fee, so I ended up paying an extra, almost another $100 on diesel here for the fuel that I ended up using. So long story short, this whole rental cost me a little bit over $1,000, which is, you know, for the amount of work that I got done, it was probably money well spent. It just didn't feel awesome that it was, you know, quite a bit more than I was expecting to pay. But like I said, that being said, I know I went over the amount, so some of this is on me, but I also think some of this is on Sunbelt in the sense that they didn't necessarily make it explicitly clear to me how this rental would be calculated. But live and learn. I call that a stupid tax. I guess I will just learn this for the future. But like I said, it was a good experience. I got a lot of work done, and I'm able to move forward with my project, and that's the important part. So I'm very excited, and hopefully you'll join me for a future video where I'm going to continue documenting my process of building this little garden shed. So with that being said, I hope to catch you at a future video where we can all learn something new together. Otherwise, I think I'm going to sign off. Talk to you later. Bye.